Before we carved the turkey, Natalie said her wine glass raised like she was hosting a pageant. "We voted and you're not family anymore." Cheering erupted. My cousin Laura clapped like it was a concert. Uncle Mitch toasted with his Merlot. Even my mother, my own mother, laughed and said, "Well, someone had to say it." I sat there, the stuffing on my plate gone cold, my blood hot. My dad didn't meet my eyes, just muttered into his beer. "It's probably for the best." I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping across the hardwood. "Wow," I said softly. "You actually rehearsed this." Natalie smirked. "You've been toxic for years. We're just done pretending." "Good," I whispered, reaching into my bag. I placed a thick folder in the center of the table. The sound thunk cut through their laughter. "What is that?" Natalie sneered. I leaned back in my chair, folded my arms. "Why don't you find out?" She ripped it open with that smug little grin she always wore when she thought she was winning, but by the second page, the color drained. By the third, her smile was gone. And then she screamed. Joel grabbed the folder from her hands, his jaw dropping as he read. "Danielle, is this—" "It's all real," I said, standing slowly. "Every receipt, every screenshot, every truth you thought I'd swallow forever." The room fell silent. Even the turkey knife stopped mid-cut in my uncle's hand. I turned toward the door. It wasn't always open hatred. That's the cruel part. Things didn't start with a declaration that I was disposable. It started quieter in small humiliations they thought I wouldn't notice, and in debts they believed I'd never keep count of. When I was 14, Natalie had thrown a party I wasn't even invited to. The music rattled the windows, red Solo cups littered the lawn, and neighbors called the cops. She swore to our parents it had been my idea. She said it with that syrupy voice she always used when she wanted something sweet on the surface, poison underneath. Danielle said it'd be fun. She told me it was okay. I remember Mom's glare, Dad's disappointment, and the 2 weeks I spent grounded for a party I didn't attend. "Natalie." She got a pat on the back and a warning not to be so easily influenced. That's how it worked in our house. She played the star, I played the scapegoat. I thought if I kept my head down, worked hard, maybe one day they'd see me. So at 19, I moved out barely enough money to cover rent working nights at a diner and days tutoring kids in math. I came home to an empty apartment, my textbooks spread on the floor, my dinner a packet of instant noodles, and I told myself one day they'll be proud. I carried that thought like a secret flame. But pride never came. What did come were requests. First, small dad needs dental surgery? Honey, can you help? Then bigger your cousin's tuition didn't come through. Can you spot her just this once? I told myself it was family, that this was love in action. Every transfer I made was like buying my way into belonging. Over the years, I became their quiet solution. When the heat bill was overdue, they called me. When Mom's credit cards maxed out, they called me. When Natalie and Joel's car broke down, they called me. And when her son needed therapy insurance wouldn't cover, of course, she called me. And I always said yes. Not because I didn't notice the pattern, but because saying no would make me the villain. And maybe I still clung to the idea that one day they'd call me for me, not my bank account. The jokes stung most. At family dinners, Uncle Mitch would grin and say, "Danielle's the family accountant." The table would laugh and I'd force a smile. Mom would hand me the cranberry sauce and mutter, "Well, it's easy for her. She has no kids, no real responsibilities." Dad would nod like it was true. And I'd sit there swallowing stuffing that tasted like sawdust, wondering how I could be both indispensable and invisible at the same time. I started keeping records not because I was planning anything, but because it helped me feel sane. Pages of dates amounts who asked what excuse they gave. I wanted proof that I wasn't imagining it, that my exhaustion had a shape. Over 5 years, the numbers told a story louder than words ever did. Nearly $78,000 drained from my accounts into theirs. $8,000 for Joel's rehab. $2,300 for Natalie's emergency dental work that turned out to be elective veneers. $2,500 for Dad's back surgery. $12,000 for Mom's credit card debt. $6,000 for Laura's college move-in costs. $40,500 for a family emergency that turned out to be a Cabo vacation, and those are just the ones I documented. That folder was more than paper, it was years of my life bled out quietly while they toasted Natalie as the golden child. The worst part wasn't even the money, it was the way they diminished me every time I handed it over. "Thanks, Danny," Natalie would chirp, "you're a lifesaver." But the look in her eyes wasn't gratitude, it was entitlement, like I'd simply fulfilled my duty. "You don't understand real stress," she told me once, wine in her hand, Joel smirking beside her. "You don't have a husband or kids or anyone relying on you." The irony almost made me choke. Everyone relied on me, but not one of them saw it as love. They saw it as inventory. Sometimes I caught myself staring at the cracked photo frame on my nightstand, the one from when we were little Dad's arm around both of us at the lake. The glass had broken years ago, and a move a jagged line cutting across Natalie's smile. I never replaced it. That crack felt truer than the picture itself. Looking back, I realize I trained them to treat me this way. I said yes, every time, even when it hollowed me out. I laughed off the barbs, stayed quiet during the dismissals, carried their burdens until my back ached and my own dreams gathered dust. I told myself it was family, that family was worth the sacrifice. But family is supposed to hold you too, not just take until you vanish. So by the time Natalie stood up at Thanksgiving and announced I wasn't family anymore, it wasn't the betrayal that shocked me. It was the honesty. For once, they weren't pretending, and in a twisted way, I was relieved. The shift didn't arrive with thunder. It arrived like a click you hear only because the house is finally quiet. I was washing a mug in the sink, steam fogging the window dog collar, chiming in the next room, when my phone buzzed with a bubble of cheerful punctuation that already felt rehearsed. "Natalie." "Hey, sis, quick favor. Natalie, Joel, and I are opening a wellness cafe. Need a co-signer for the loan, just for a few months. You're the responsible one. 3. I stared at the hearts until they looked like smudges. I could smell the dish soap, that fake citrus that always promises clean and never delivers it. My thumb hovered over the keyboard long enough for hot water to bite my knuckles. No. I didn't add a paragraph to soften it. No emoji. Just the smallest word I've ever had to lift. For a beat, nothing. Then the shape of my life shifted an inch. The silence spread first, thin, polite. Mom forgot our Tuesday check-ins. Dad sent answers that could fit on a postage stamp. Natalie posted an Instagram story with pale sunlight and a mug on a book, and the caption, "Protect your peace, cut out toxic energy." I watched the little circle glow pink, and for once, I didn't tap. I set the phone face down and listened to my apartment breathe radiator, ticking the refrigerator, whispering like a conspirator, my own heart meeting the moment like a metronome. That night, I pulled out the shoebox where I kept my records. It wasn't a shrine to bitterness. It was the opposite order against chaos. Bank transfers, emails, screenshots. I spread them across the table the way some people spread tarot cards, looking for the pattern that had been reading me for years. The numbers blinked back like streetlights. $8,000 rehab, $2,300 veneers disguised as emergency, $12,000 credit card fire I was supposed to be grateful to carry water to, $4,500 family emergency that turned out to be Cabo seen through Laura's geotag. I traced ink with the side of my hand and felt the fine powder of old toner. The paper edges nicked my fingers in 3 places, thin stings that felt truer than anything anyone had called me lately. The next morning, I brewed coffee deliberately, grounds blooming, kettle hissing, and opened my laptop. Not to drag anyone, not to curate revenge, to see. I searched messages I'd archived instead of answered Mom's. "You know we'd do it for you," they wouldn't. Dad's, "It's just a bridge loan to where Natalie's $2,000 is nothing to you to whom." And then, the ones I hadn't planned on finding Natalie in a private thread, I somehow still had access to Danielle's "a cash cow with no spine." Words that felt like they'd been living under my ribcage rent-free, explaining why breathing had started to hurt. I printed everything. The old laser hummed the room, filling with that warm plastic smell I always associate with new starts. I sorted by category medical debt emergencies, things I wasn't supposed to see, and slid each stack into clear sleeves. I bought a folder thick enough to hold 5 years of apologies I'd never get. I didn't label the spine. Let mystery do one small mercy for me for once. Around me, their freeze hardened. The family group chat went suspiciously quiet, then came back to life without me. Photos from Sunday lunch surfaced Natalie at the center of every frame, my mother's hand on her shoulder, like a crown that never slips. Dad texted me a single busy when I asked about his x-ray as if my concern were another bill he didn't want to see. My name got trimmed from the edges of conversations like a hangnail. It's funny how exclusion chooses plain tools. Somewhere in that hush, the crack inside me stopped being a wound and started being a door. I took the cracked photo frame from my nightstand, the one of us at the lake Dad's arm. Natalie's smile split by broken glass, and set it on the kitchen table beside the folder. The fracture cut through her face like a fault line. I traced it with my thumbnail until the hour softened, until the urge to glue it back together finally receded. Not everything broken needs my hands. I wish I could say I reached this clarity in one clean breath. I didn't. Old habits die like dandelions, pull 1-3 more pop up. The next afternoon, Mom called with her voice dipped in honey. "Sweetheart, I heard you're overwhelmed. Natalie told me you said no. We just wondered if you're okay." "This isn't like you," I almost apologized out of muscle memory. The word rose hot and absurd. I swallowed it. "I'm fine," I said, and the answer is still no. Silence, then the little click of maternal disappointment, familiar as the oven timer. "Well," she said, "don't be surprised if people take space from negative energy." Negative energy? It's wild the gymnastics required to turn refusal into a flaw. The plan didn't arrive with fanfare, it grew sideways while I lived. I began saving PDFs under clear names. I added dates I used to blur. I skimmed statements from the time I paid off Natalie's card to avoid fees and found the Santa Monica Hotel with a guest named Alyssa linked to the reservation. I didn't annotate it with outrage. I simply printed the page and slid it into things I wasn't supposed to see. My dog laid her head on my foot, the weight a reminder that belonging can be honest and simple. I thought about every time I'd been told I didn't have a real life because I didn't have a husband to disappoint or a toddler to be late with. I thought about how often I'd been both lamp and cord, providing light and the means to power it. I didn't decide to confront them. I decided to stop auditioning. The difference matters. Confrontation is a stage. Refusal is a locked door. Invitations for Thanksgiving arrived like a test written in pencil. Mom slipped, "Bring your famous sweet potatoes," at the end of a message that still avoided the words, "I'm sorry." Natalie texted a chirpy reminder about on-time arrivals with a winking emoji like she was HR for a holiday. I could feel the ambush under the tablecloth of it all. My seat pre-assigned my lines already written. I didn't change my RSVP. I changed my expectations. I packed the folder last. It didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like a mirror finally willing to look me in the eye. I put it in my bag with my keys and a small bottle of hand lotion because my hands always dry out when the heat kicks on at my parents' place. I tucked the photo frame in a drawer and left it there face down, refusing the superstition that you have to carry every heirloom to be considered faithful. Driving over, I passed the exit for the lake. The water at this time of year goes still like it's listening. As a kid, Dad would wake me before dawn, whispering, "The fish bite best when the world is quiet." He meant it about fish. I think he meant it about me too, but never learned how to say it. I merged back into traffic and let the idea pass through me like weather. The house smelled like rosemary and floor polish, the kind of clean that stings first. Laughter rolled from the dining room in a tone I recognized, performative, buoyant, a little hysterical. I kissed my mother's cheek and she air-kissed back, calculating. Natalie's hug was all collarbone. "You made it," she said as if I'd been late all my life. I set the sweet potatoes on the counter, slid my bag with the folder under my chair, and felt my pulse slow to something almost ceremonial. I told myself a simple thing. You will not bargain for your own dignity at this table. If there's a vote, let them number their hands. If there's a stage, let them perform. Your role is exit, not explanation. The plan fit in my chest like a secret shelf finally put to use. Somewhere between the salad and the way Mom forgot to place a wine glass at my setting. "Oh, you're not much of a drinker, are you?" I realized I wasn't waiting to be rescued from this family anymore. I was waiting to rescue myself. The difference tasted like the first sip of water after a long run, startling clean pure. When Natalie stood to speak when her voice gathered the room the way it always does, I rested my hand on the folder just to feel its weight. Not to brace for impact, to confirm I wasn't empty-handed anymore. I had proof of a history they kept rewriting. I had a no. I'd practiced until it didn't tremble. I had a door already cracked open in my mind, a path already walked by my feet in memory chairback hardwood song, the quiet outside like a benediction. Breaking isn't always the sound of something shattering. Sometimes it's the sound of a latch settling the hush of a room after a decision finally clicks into place. Sitting at that table napkin folded once across my lap, I felt the click and I understood they'd mistake it for coldness because they've never known warmth that didn't cost someone. I didn't plan to win. I planned to leave whole. Silence is a funny thing. Most people think it means nothing is happening. In my world, silence meant everything was happening, just not where they could see it. After Thanksgiving, while they laughed at their own cruelty, I spent my evenings drafting something stronger than comebacks, a new life without them. The first step was paperwork. Dry, boring paperwork. The kind no one in my family ever bothered to learn because they always had me to figure it out. I logged into the attorney's portal and revoked every signature I'd ever given them power of attorney emergency contacts medical proxies. Little lines of legal text that had chained me to their chaos for years. As the forms loaded, the blue cursor blinked at me like it was daring me to finally do it. I typed my name, steady deliberate, the way you hold a match to kindling and watch flame take. Click, submit. Just like that, they lost access to me in every way that mattered. Next, I called the bank. I asked them to freeze any joint account still carrying my name, even the dusty old savings account Mom insisted we keep for family emergencies. Emergencies always meant someone else's vacation, someone else's lie. The customer service rep confirmed closure, and I exhaled so deeply I startled my dog awake. She looked at me with that tilted head. Only dogs have the one that says you finally did the right thing, didn't you? At night when the world was quiet, I spread the folder's pages across my bed. I wasn't looking for revenge material. I was looking for clarity. Each bank transfer was a breadcrumb, each screenshot a shard of a mirror I'd refused to look into. The picture assembled itself. I had been the silent infrastructure of this family. Not celebrated, not cherished, just used. They built their lives on my invisible scaffolding, then had the audacity to call me toxic the one time I refused. I sorted everything into sections with labels in black ink: medical, $1, $500 for Dad's surgery, $8,000 for Joel's rehab. Debt, $12,000 to Mom's credit card's interest, already gnawing at the edges. Emergencies, $4,500 for Cabo, $2,300 veneers disguised as urgent dental. Mockery. Screenshots of texts where Natalie called me a cash cow with no spine. I slid each pile into sheet protectors, the plastic whispering as I sealed them. It wasn't anger I felt. It was relief, like I had finally placed weights on a scale that had been tipping against me since childhood. And then I added the Santa Monica receipt. Joel's credit card, 3 nights, a guest named Alyssa. I tucked it in under things they never expected me to see. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I just whispered, not my burden anymore. It wasn't just money I reclaimed. I changed my emergency contacts at work, deleting my parents' numbers and replacing them with my best friend from college. I rewrote passwords they once pressured me to share. I pulled my cracked childhood photo from the nightstand, the one where Natalie's smile is split by the line of broken glass, and slid it into a box in the closet. It felt like burying an artifact from a civilization I no longer belonged to. The strangest part, my body noticed before my mind did. I started sleeping through the night, no jolts awake at 2 a.m., waiting for the next urgent text. My appetite came back. Food tasted like food again, not fuel to get me to the next crisis. Even coffee tasted different, warmer, sharper, no longer diluted with resentment. Meanwhile, their campaign continued in the shadows. The group chat buzzed without me, photos of dinners, Natalie's children grinning with syrup-smeared faces, captions about family first. Mom sent a carefully worded voicemail. "Sweetheart, you're still our daughter, but this attitude isn't you." "Come back to the table, let's move on." Dad texted. We all said things in anger. "Don't make it worse." Not one of them said we're sorry. Not one of them asked what I felt, only what I could still provide. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I built rituals of my own. Morning runs where the cold air burned my lungs in a way that felt clean. Long showers where I let myself cry, not because I missed them, but because grief still needed space, even when you know you're better off. Therapy appointments where I said words I'd never admitted aloud. I was never their daughter. I was their resource. The therapist didn't flinch. She just nodded and said, "And now you're free to redefine both." Freedom wasn't fireworks. It was paperwork. It was silence. It was the folder under my arm at Thanksgiving, heavier than any casserole dish, pulsing like a heartbeat I finally claimed as my own. I knew they'd come for me. Calls, guilt manipulation, maybe even threats. That's how people act when their supply is cut off. But for once, I wasn't afraid, because I wasn't waiting to win them back anymore. I was waiting for them to see themselves in the mirror I'd built page by page, and when they did, I knew it wouldn't be me screaming. Silence lasted 3 days. 3 whole days after Thanksgiving, where my phone sat face down on the counter, blank and blessed. For the first time in years, no one needed saving. I fed my dog in the morning, laced my sneakers for a run, and brewed coffee slow enough to watch the steam curl like a ribbon. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd keep their distance. On the 4th day, the messages began. First Mom, a missed call, then another, then a voicemail, her voice thin and trembling. "Danielle, sweetheart, we were angry. We didn't mean half of it, but we're still your family. Please call me back." I didn't. Then Natalie. She didn't bother with apologies. She texted like a dagger dipped in sugar. "You don't even realize what you've done. Joel's filing for divorce. Are you happy? Something is really wrong with you." I stared at her words until the screen dimmed. My thumb itched to respond to defend myself, but I set the phone down. If Natalie wanted a reaction, she'd have to scream into her own echo chamber. Dad came next. "You went too far. We all said things we regret, but what you did was nuclear. Your mother is a wreck. Fix this. Fix this." The phrase struck me harder than any insult. All my life I'd been their fixer, their quiet janitor mopping up blood and broken promises. But this wasn't a mess. This was truth. And truth doesn't get fixed. By the end of the week, the escalation began. A strange number called while I was at work. I picked up out of habit. A man introduced himself. "I'm Mark, calling on behalf of your father." He explained Dad said I was the primary executive of the family trust, and they just needed options. My stomach dropped. "That role was revoked months ago," I said flatly. "Finalized by the attorney." Silence hummed through the receiver before he stammered, "Oh, I see." I hung up. That night I changed the locks on my apartment. Not because I thought they'd show up, but because I wanted to sleep without the phantom fear that they could. While they scrambled, I built peace. Therapy sessions where my voice didn't shake. Early morning runs where frost painted the grass silver. Grocery trips where I lingered over fruit like I had time. Simple things, ordinary things, but they felt radical. Because they were mine. And then the letters started. The first envelope came in January, my mother's handwriting curling across it like she dipped the pen in guilt. 3 pages long. Page 1 was regret. "We said things in anger. You've always been the strong one." Page 2 shifted to guilt. "Your father's health isn't good. Natalie's alone now. Poor Ellie keeps asking for her aunt." And page 3, the real ask: "We're selling the house, but we're underwater on the mortgage. Just a little help to get through this, and we'll never ask again." I sat at my kitchen table letter, trembling in my hands, and let myself feel every pull, the duty, the ache, the reflex to fix. Then I folded the pages, slid them back into the envelope, and dropped it straight into the trash. Because it wasn't about Ellie. It wasn't about health. It wasn't even about the house. It was about access. Always access. Meanwhile, unexpected voices slipped through the cracks. Cousin Laura, yes, the same one who clapped when they voted me out, sent a text: "I didn't know you paid for my tuition. I'm sorry." I followed the crowd. "You were always the one who actually helped." I read it twice, didn't answer. But part of me filed it away under maybe she gets it now. Joel, of all people, emailed me. I filed the divorce papers. Everything in that folder checked out. She lied, cheated, manipulated. Not just you, me too. You did the right thing. I should have left sooner. I wasn't expecting that. It didn't make me happy, just strangely validated, like my folder had detonated more than one facade. But my parents, Natalie, they doubled down. By February, another envelope arrived, handwritten again. My mother's voice this time sharper. "We are still your blood. Enough is enough. Help us." I held the letter over the trash bin and thought about the cracked photo frame tucked in my closet, the glass slicing Natalie's smile in two. I thought about Dad at the lake when I was 10, whispering, "The fish bite best when the world is quiet." And I realized I'd finally found the quiet he promised. They were still shouting, but I didn't have to answer. For the first time, the power struggle wasn't a struggle at all, because I wasn't playing. They didn't knock so much as announce themselves 3 sharp raps that echoed down my apartment hallway like a gavel. Rain hissed against the stairwell window. The whole building smelled like wet wool and lemon cleaner. I checked the peephole and saw my mother's coat first, that camel color she wears when she wants to look reasonable. Dad stood behind her, stiff as a coat rack. No, Natalie. For a second, a childish hope sprinted through me. Maybe they were here to say we're sorry. Hope is a muscle memory. It fires even after you swear you've stopped using it. I opened the door only as far as the chain would allow. "Lobby," I said. 5 minutes. I closed. It slipped on shoes and met them under the humming fluorescent light that made everyone look a little honest and a little sick. Mom held a manila envelope like it might sprout teeth. "We came to talk," she said, voice smoothed to a salon finish. "Face to face like family." "We tried that," I said. Remember, Dad stared at the floor tiles. His voice, when it came, sounded like he'd borrowed it from a stranger. "Your mother's had a hard time. You know how she is." I thought about answering with every little how I knew. How her love dissolved under heat. How she sharpened guilt into needles and called it embroidery. But I let the thought pass through me like a draft. "What do you want?" Mom flinched as if the directness had weight. She extended the envelope. "We're selling the house. The bank is uncooperative. We need a bridge." She swallowed. "Not a gift, a loan. Will—" She edited herself mid-sentence like she always did when truth threatened to leak. "We'll try." Try. Such a generous word for people who never had to. "I read your letters," I said. All 3 pages. Twice. I tapped the envelope. "Did you bring an apology or just a request, Danielle?" she said, soft and wounded. "We're still your family." The fluorescent light flickered a tired eyelid. Rain stitched itself louder against the glass. I heard my heartbeat the way you hear an upstairs neighbor's music annoying until you realize it's you living your own life too loudly for the first time. "I'm not your emergency plan," I said. Something cracked. Not glass, not bone. Just the fiction we'd all agreed to live in. Dad looked up, then eyes shiny like he'd been staring into wind. "It's complicated," he said. "No," I answered, and the word felt clean in my mouth. "It's very simple. You voted. You stood up, raised your glasses, and made a spectacle. You're not family." Those were the words remember good. "I'm just respecting your decision." Mom's face pinched. We were angry. I was generous, I said. "For years." She drew herself taller. "You kept records. She meant you embarrassed us. She meant you ruined the nice lie we'd polished." "I kept the truth," I said. "Because nobody else did." Her mouth trembled. Dad cleared his throat, that old preamble to a lecture that never saved me. "You're being cold," he said. "You've always been strong. Don't mistake strong for cruel." I thought of the nights I Venmo'd dollars I should have spent on my own dentist. Of the plane ticket I didn't buy because Laura just needed a little help. Of the cracked photo frame in my closet, the glass slicing across our childhood smiles like a prophecy no one read. "I'm not being cruel," I said. "I'm being finished." Mom's fingers tightened on the envelope. "We can't do this without you." I let the sentence land. It thudded at my feet like a brick. "Then you'll learn too," I said. "Or you won't." Both outcomes are not mine to manage. She looked to Dad for backup. He reached, found only air. In that pause, I recognized a man who had always opted for weather over action, who had watched the storm and called it inevitable. I loved him anyway, but love isn't a credit line. I'm returning these, I added, pulling a smaller envelope from my coat pocket. Inside 2 house keys, a laminated medical proxy card cut cleanly in half, and a photocopy of the notarized revocation of power of attorney. Paper that looked boring until you realized it was freedom printed in Times New Roman. I'm not your daughter on call, not your signer, not your scapegoat, not your wallet. Mom didn't reach for it. She blinked like a camera trying to refocus. Natalie's struggling, she whispered as if that name still had gravity in my galaxy. Joel filed. The children, I am not the consequence fairy, I said. I don't show up when bad behavior matures into outcomes. From outside, a siren Dopplered past and the lobby light steadied. Somewhere above us, a neighbor laughed. Life went on indifferent and whole. Please, Mom said, a last card revealed. Do it for your father. Do it for the family. There, it was the linchpin of our house. Do it for the story about us. I stepped back, felt the cool metal of the security door against my spine. Family isn't the people who vote on your worth, I said. Family is the people who don't make you pay tolls to cross back over a bridge they burned. She exhaled a sound that was almost a sob. Dad's shoulders collapsed an inch like a tent giving up its shape. I opened the security door and held it, a gesture that felt ceremonial. I'm leaving now, I said. You can keep the big envelope. I won't be reading it. I set my small envelope on the ledge in case they wanted the artifacts of my former role. And if you come here again, I won't answer the door. Mom's face hardened the way clay does when you stop adding water. After everything we did for you, I nearly laughed. The lobby light hummed, patient. You raised me, I said. I returned the favor longer than most children do. That ledger is closed. I pushed the door and stepped into the rain. It met my cheeks cool and impersonal, no gentler for my courage, no crueler for their need. That felt right. The world doesn't owe a soft landing to truth. I didn't go upstairs. I drove. City lights smeared themselves into lines, and the wipers kept time like a drummer who finally found the tempo. The highway unfolded toward a place my feet knew better than my head the lake. The water there goes quiet in late winter, a held breath. I parked, walked to the edge, and pulled the cracked photo frame from the bag I'd tucked under the seat weeks ago. I slid the photograph out, 2 girls and a father smiling at a horizon we couldn't see yet, and slipped the paper into my pocket. I popped the back off, removed the broken glass piece by piece, wrapped it in a grocery bag to throw away later. No litter, no ceremony built on damage. Just an object returned to honest parts. I held the empty frame to the sky. Without the glass, it stopped reflecting me and started framing what was in front of me. Dark water, a far dock, a single porch light across the shore. I lowered it and set it in the trunk of my car. I'd donate it tomorrow. Someone else could put a new picture in it. The point wasn't to keep filling it with the past. Wind cut across the surface, but under it, the lake kept its stillness. Dad once said the fish bite best when the world is quiet. I closed my eyes and let the sentence drift. He had been half right. The truth bites best when you are. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new message from an unknown number. We're still family. No name. No apology. Just the same old hook without the rest of the song. I stared at the words until they lost meaning and became shapes. Then I powered the phone down. On the drive home, the car felt different, not lighter exactly, but truer to its own weight. In the rear view, the city stacked itself back into buildings I didn't owe streets I could take or leave. I reached the lobby and found the manila envelope gone from the ledge. Fine. Let them hold onto paper like it might turn into a rope. In my apartment, the air was warm and honest. My dog thumped her tail once as if to register the weather inside me had changed. I made tea and stood by the window, rain stippling the glass. In the pain, my reflection didn't look triumphant. It looked rested. In the end, the confrontation wasn't fireworks. It was a frame without glass finally letting the present come through. It was a sentence finished without shouting. It was an echo that didn't require a response. They had voted. So had I. January slipped into February, and for the first time in my life, I noticed how long mornings could be when nobody was tugging at your sleeve. I woke before my alarm ran in the frost-bitten air until my breath made ghosts. I brewed coffee slow, listening to the hiss of the kettle, savoring the fact that no text would interrupt to remind me of someone else's emergency. Peace, I discovered, doesn't roar. It hums. It's the sound of your own keys jingling on your own ring. It's locking the door behind you and knowing no one else has a copy. I found myself doing things I'd put off for years. Dentist appointments, checkups, therapy that wasn't about how to save everyone else, but how to finally sit with myself. I called friends I hadn't seen in forever, people I'd drifted from because my family always came first, always needed something, always demanded I be available. They didn't ask for money. They didn't guilt me. They just asked if I wanted to come over or grab lunch or watch a stupid movie. I even applied for a new job in another city. Not because I was running, but because I could. A bigger place, a clean slate. I started volunteering at an animal shelter on weekends, not out of obligation, but out of choice. That word, choice, still feels like a miracle on my tongue. The strangest part, I wasn't lonely. They had spent years warning me that silence would destroy me, that without them I'd have no one, that independence was just a fancy word for emptiness. But silence became my sanctuary. I could finally hear my own thoughts without their static. And what I heard wasn't bitterness. It was relief. Of course they tried to claw back. Letters, unknown numbers, messages disguised as olive branches that always carried a hidden ask. We're still family. Ellie misses you. We can't do this without you. I stopped opening them because the truth is they didn't want me back. They wanted access back. To my wallet, to my time, to my silence. But that version of me, the girl who thought love meant carrying everyone else's weight, she's gone. Now when I walk past the lake, I don't think about fishing trips or broken promises. I think about stillness. I think about water that doesn't have to explain its own depth to be respected. Do I regret it? Only that I didn't do it sooner. And maybe that's the real ending, not revenge, not some grand reconciliation, but the simple, radical act of living without permission. So let me ask you, have you ever carried a family on your back until you could barely stand? And if you finally put them down, what did you learn when you could finally breathe? Tell me in the comments, because your story might be the one someone else needs to hear tonight. And if mine resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You're not alone. You never were.